Chinese President Xi Jinping has renewed calls for unification with Taiwan in his New Year address. The comments come after days of Chinese live fire exercises around Taiwan. The military drills forced Taiwan to cancel dozens of domestic flights and dispatch jets and warships to monitor. Taiwan has rejected the mainland's claims that it's part of territorial China. President Xi says he believes reunification is inevitable.
Compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are bound by blood ties thicker than water, and the historical trend towards national reunification is unstoppable.
Xi Jinping also used his New Year's address to hail his country's technological progress in areas such as artificial intelligence and semiconductors. He also highlighted China's economic and military growth over the past 12 months, saying the country's power is at levels never seen before.
China's total economic output has continuously reached new milestones. Economic strength, technological capability, national defence power, and overall national power reached new heights.
Let's get some analysis on these comments with national security expert at the Australian National University, Jennifer Parker. Jen, hi there. Happy New Year to you, and thanks for making time for us today. Firstly, can I just get your reflections on Xi Jinping's comments about Taiwan in his New Year message? What do you think it means?
Yeah, Mel, thanks for having me on and Happy New Year. Look, I think the comments that Xi Jinping made about reunification of Taiwan being unstoppable are consistent with the things that he's been saying since his tenure, over 10 years now. There's a point, though, that's changed in the last couple of years. So previously, Chinese officials would refer to the peaceful reunification of Taiwan being their goal, trying to highlight that it wasn't about military takeover of Taiwan. Over the last couple of years, we've seen the term peaceful reunification not used and just talking about the unstoppable reunification. So I think this really reaffirms Xi Jinping's aim of reuniting Taiwan, or reuniting in his terms Taiwan with China, and really highlighting that they have the military capability to do that by force if necessary, which is consistent really coming off the back of 2 days of drills where they rehearsed taking Taiwan by force.
Well, exactly. This is what we saw, I suppose, in those drills earlier this week. You talked there about sort of the change in phrasing when it comes to this so-called reunification of China and Taiwan. How much of an escalation physically are we seeing now with those drills? How much of an escalation were they this week compared to previous Chinese activity around Taiwan?
Well, these drills are quite significant. They're certainly the largest and most complex drills China has conducted in the vicinity of Taiwan. And this has been part of a growing trend. So, we know that President Trump said during the week China does this all the time. That's not quite true. In 2022, China did its large joint exercise around Taiwan in response to Nancy Pelosi, the then US Speaker of the House, visit. Since then, we've seen about 2 of these exercises a year. But every time we see these exercises, they grow in the number of assets contributing to that, so ships and aircraft, and the complexity of that. So this iteration of the exercise, and really, exercise undermines really what it is. It very much is a rehearsal. It showed China pretending to blockade ports. It had rocket firing, so firing rockets that landed within the contiguous zone, so 24 nautical miles of the north and south of Taiwan, exercising the strikes on Taiwan, and really kind of coming in line with a strategic communications plan from China, or a propaganda plan that showed posters of China punching Taiwan, firing at Taiwan. It was a really aggressive exercise. It involved the Army, Navy, Rocket Force, Air Force, and the Coast Guard of China. So certainly the most comprehensive, and it really does show how China has developed this massive military capability to take Taiwan by force if they chose to do so. And the US Pentagon recently put out a report about 2 weeks ago that talked about China's capability. They do this every year, and they highlighted in that report that they still believe that China has a goal for their military, a modernization goal, to be able to take Taiwan by force by 2027 if they choose to do so.
And so, Jen, in your view, does that indicate, you know, are we likely to see an invasion of Taiwan by China this year?
Look, this is a really difficult question. I think that despite the fact that China and Xi Jinping in his New Year's Eve speech is not referring to the peaceful unification anymore, I still think it is part of China's long-term strategy to try and reunify Taiwan by other means than military if they can. The challenge is that, as we're seeing in domestic politics in Taiwan, it is looking increasingly unlikely that that could ever happen peacefully. Now, if China makes the assessment that it can't happen peacefully, then I think they will do it militarily. And we're seeing the design of their forces. So investment in amphibious ships, and specifically amphibious ships used to bridge the beaches around Taiwan, which are generally quite shallow. So specifically being designed for that mission. So I think the chances of military action around Taiwan by China are increasingly likely, although not inevitable, but it's something we need to be deeply concerned about.
Jen, we've also heard this morning from Taiwan's president saying he would try everything he could to protect the nation and defend democratic and a free way of life. How prepared is Taiwan to defend itself in the case of, you know, military action by China?
Look, Taiwan has a number of kind of internal domestic issues where they've struggled to get their recent defence budget through and things like that. But I think Taiwan is increasingly focused on this mission of being able to defend the island. Its military capability is quite old. Notably, in fact, about 2 weeks before these drills commenced, the US announced its largest $1.1 billion of military aid for Taiwan to help them get greater missile capability and drone capabilities to try and defend the island. But I don't think that if Taiwan is invaded or blockaded, so we're trying to stop merchant vessels coming in to resupply Taiwan, I don't think it'll be just Taiwan defending itself. I think that there are a number of countries that would come to Taiwan's aid. And to be honest, I think that if China made the decision to take Taiwan militarily, this would be a regional conflict quite quickly.
All right, Jennifer Parker, there's national security expert at the Australian National University. Thanks very much for your time. Always appreciate your analysis.
Thanks, Mel.